A perennial question among a lot of Android developers is, why does the emulator take so long to load, and why is it so slow, and what can we do about it? If you're running with an Intel CPU, there is an option that we can do to speed up the emulator. What we need to do first, one second, allow me to resize my Eclipse. What we need to do first is in Eclipse's Java view, click on the Android SDK Manager, which you see right here. The Android SDK Manager, when it comes up, is going to look like this. And if we look, let's see, I'll go to 19. If you take a look under the different Android versions, you'll typically see something called Intel x86 Atom System Image. Click on that. Okay, click on that for whichever package you want, and then click on Install, and let that go ahead and install. Now, there's a version of these for most of the API levels, and you see on my computer, I've downloaded some, but not all. I think on this one, yeah, I haven't installed for API 17. I haven't yet installed it for 18 or 19. Now, one trick is that word install is a bit misleading because it doesn't actually install. And this is tricky. You might think, well, I installed it, it's not working. It doesn't actually install. What it does is, whoops, what it does, I pulled up the wrong window there. Here we go. It actually just brings it into this folder structure. So it's going to put it where your Android SDK location is, and then extras, and then Intel, and then Hardware Accelerated Execution Manager. It's going to drop this file. We'll need to double click that file to install the Hardware Accelerated Execution Manager. But how do we know where our Android SDK is? That's one of those things we install once and we oftentimes forget where it is. If you've forgotten, easy way to remember is to go to Window and then Preferences, okay, and then choose Android, and you'll see right here it has the Android SDK location. You might not remember that, but that's something that we set up very early on when we set up our project. So take that, okay, copy that, go, in my case, to your Windows Explorer, and paste. Okay, and then from there, click on Extras. From there, click on Intel. From there, Hardware Accelerated Execution Manager. And then I've already installed mine, but click on this, and one of two things will happen. You'll either get an installation screen, or you will get a message that XD is not enabled. And in this case, I've gotten the installations wizard, which is good. That means things are looking good so far. And you see it looks like this because I've already installed it. If you have not installed it, it will look a little bit different. It will just prompt you through the installation process, as long as your XD flag is configured. Now, if your XD flag is not configured, that's something you have to change in your BIOS, which is a little bit tricky. What you have to do is restart your computer, and typically a screen will pop up briefly when you restart your computer, and it will tell you how to get into BIOS, or it might say system configuration or something like that. It's usually either F2 or F12, depending on your manufacturer. But see that screen that comes up. And that's typically something we don't want to play with often. So proceed with caution. Proceed with caution. But if you do have a message that the XD is not enabled, that's what you have to do. Now, because this is something that happens on startup of your computer, it's not something I can screen capture easily because my computer has to be running for me to screen capture. So the best bet, if you do need to enable that XD, is just to do a search. Do a search on changing the XD flag in BIOS, and that will walk you through. That's how I figured out to do it, but that will walk you through. Assuming that XD flag is set up, then what you can do is you can go in and install the Intel Hardware Accelerated Execution Manager. Okay, we're almost there. Next, what we need to do is once we've done that, we need to go to the AVD Manager, and that's this guy here. Okay, the Android Virtual Device Manager. And what we want to do then is click New. Now here's the important part. For the CPU, once we need to select Intel Atom. Okay, AVD name, I can call this Demo Intel AVD. Device doesn't really matter, whatever we want to pick. Okay, here's one trick though, and if I don't know a way around this, if you're watching this video and you do know a way around this, please post it in the comments so that we can update everybody. And that is, to do the Intel Atom, you can only use one of the pure Android APIs. You can't use the Google API. So what I mean is this. Watch as I pick Android 422 API 17. I get an option here, Intel Atom. But if I were to change that to level 17 Google APIs, I no longer get that option. So that is one limitation. If you want to do something like maps, you typically need to have one of those Google APIs. So that means that unfortunately you can't use this. So then I'm going to choose Intel Atom. One major benefit I found, and I don't know if this is just coincidence or not, but without the Intel Atom processor, I could only do an emulated camera. With the Intel Atom processor, I can actually tell it to use the webcam, and it actually works. I've never gotten that to work on any other emulator. RAM, I'm going to go ahead and bump up to 768. VM heap will make it 32. Internal storage 200, SD card 100, and then use host GPU. And finally, when I'm happy with this, I'm going to choose OK. Once I do that, I can come back to the Android Virtual Device Manager, and let me squish this up so we can see it better on our presentation. And I'm going to select the emulator I created and choose Start. And what we'll find is that it will start much faster than we're used to for non-hardware accelerated emulators. Also, it'll be a lot easier to deploy software to it. It will boot much faster. It will be a lot more responsive. I've seen a lot of luck with this. So, sure enough, here's the AVD that we've created, and I'm going to choose this. And I've clicked on the camera, and sure enough, well, it is a little bit sideways. If you've been watching these videos and wondered what I look like, here I am. And so this is the live camera. It is a camera that is emulated on the device, so I can snap this picture. And there we go. And then it's going to insert this picture into, and forgive me, as I click outside of the screen capture software, occasionally I lose sound and I have to go back. Anyway, it's going to take that picture and put it into an image gallery that I can use. So if I want to have an actual photo instead of the checkerboard pattern with a little colored box that comes up with it that's typical with the emulator, that is an option I have. And that would work, when I'm working on the search by color algorithm. What I'm doing is sampling a picture for a variety of colors. So having a live actual photo is definitely a big benefit over just having the default checkerboard pattern. So try that out. From what I've seen, it works on Intel processors. Both of the laptops that I'm using for our class have Intel processors, and I've installed it on both. I have noticed a lot better performance. I don't know what alternatives there are for other processors, and we know it is limited because you can't do the Google API, at least to my knowledge, you can't do the Google API with the Intel Atom. But if you're doing a simple project, if you're not using maps or something like that, this might be a way to speed things up. Of course, another option to speed things up is to plug in an actual Android device into your computer. And when we get to, if I right click on something like plant places here, I'm going to go to debug as, and then, well, shoot. Did I click the right one? Oh, I clicked the wrong one. Plant places Android. Okay, debug as Android application. And what will usually come up, if I've selected it, what will usually come up is a little window where I can pick a device I want to run on. If I've plugged my Android phone into my computer, there we go. Okay, now you see this one, this is interesting. You see it says choose running Android device. It's telling me that I cannot run on my device I just created, and the reason being, this is the real Plant Places, which does use maps, so I have to run on a Google API. So that's why we have a little X there. Now, by the way, side note, so if I plugged in my phone, we would see that my phone would be an option here as well, something else I could test on. Now, if you say, oh, but that's not fair, I don't have an Android phone. Keep in mind, the world is introduced to thousands of Android phones every day that have just gone off contract. They're very easy to pick up used on something like eBay. An Android phone without cellular service but with Wi-Fi is still a very powerful device, especially for testing. So consider that if you don't actually have an Android phone, just get a used one. You know, they're cheap, they're easy to find. So anyway, how do we get this box, by the way? If you've never seen this box before, sometimes your app will just launch an AVD automatically. How do we get this box to come up so that we can actually pick which AVD we're going to run? Well, what we do for that is I'm going to right click on Plant Places Android. I'm going to choose Debug As, and then this is off screen, but Debug Configurations is at the bottom of that screen. And if we go to Target, by default, it automatically picks. But if we say always prompt to pick device, that means every time we debug this, it's going to bring up that little dialog box, and it's going to say, here are the currently running AVDs, and here are the AVDs that you can start. And again, if you have your phone plugged in with the USB, then many times your phone will show up as long as your computer recognizes the USB. As long as it recognizes that. I have had some trouble occasionally where if I disconnect it incorrectly, it doesn't recognize it anymore. I have to go back and reset some settings, which offhand I don't recall what they are. So in any case, I hope this is helpful to you. Something I've just started using myself. Please let me know how it works for you, your feedback, your comments, anything else you know to improve emulator performance. Thank you.